everybody. I am coming today to talk to you about weathering, erosion, and I just lost my train of thought. Oh, deposition. And I wanted to show you some real life examples and kind of go on a little field trip. So bear with me, we might hear some weird noises. By the way, this is my house in the background. There's my car, which many of you know. Okay, so you do not have to go far to find evidence of these processes, even in your own house. So if you look down here, you'll see a big crack in my driveway. And that crack is an example of weathering. So the rock has been broken down from one big piece to now two smaller pieces, and eventually there's even some like really little pieces in there that have come from the bigger piece. So in this case, what happened was right here is a big old tree, and under the tree is roots. And the roots are growing, and I know that they come under the driveway because actually you can see, we might have cut it out. There's a great big root that went all the way along the house. So this is an example of, sorry, I know the lighting's not good, organic weathering. So organic is something from life. So when like plant roots break up rock, that's organic weathering because it's being caused by a living thing. So I'm going to keep walking down here. Now, this is another kind of weathering is chemical weathering. Chemical weathering is when there's some kind of a reaction between substances in the air, the water, and substances in the rock. So a really common one is when water interacts with limestone, it softens the limestone. That would be chemical weathering. This example right here is not weathering of stone, but do you see this, how this board is cracked here? And that happened because as water interacted with the wood, it softened the wood until the point where the wood broke from being one big piece to smaller pieces. So that would be an example of chemical weathering. And then our last one is physical weathering. Physical weathering happens when a force breaks down rock or some other material. So common examples are wind. If you think about wind, if it blows over a big rock every day, it's eventually going to, take off little tiny pieces of rock, which we know as sand. Water can also do this if water's hitting a rock constantly, but everywhere that you see sand is an example of physical weathering because either water or wind, a physical process, beat on the rock until tiny pieces of it broke off. So weathering is when big rock becomes smaller rocks. That's it. Another really common thing you'll see in Michigan, if you ever hear maybe the adults in your life complain about the roads in Michigan, we have a hard time because of our climate. We have a lot of physical weathering that happens to our roads. In our case, what happens is liquid water goes into tiny cracks, minuscule cracks in the road, and then it freezes. And hopefully, when water freezes, it expands, it gets bigger, and that breaks up. It went from being a little hole, and it puts so much pressure that it eventually breaks. So every winter we have rainfall and then it freezes, it breaks apart. And the thing is, if you don't do anything about it, it gets worse and worse because now there's a bigger crack, which can collect more water, which will freeze more, break more. The next year, water comes, break it. So if you think about it, this is how mountains and boulders and things have been broken down for, the billions of years this planet has been traveling around the sun, is a little bit at a time, water getting in, freezing, cracking, more water gets in, freeze, crack, until you might see somewhere in like Yosemite, a whole big chunk of a mountain might fall off. So physical weathering. All right. So weathering is the breaking down of rocks. Erosion and deposition are kind of opposites. Or you could also say it's like a two-step process. So erosion is any time when a substance is moving from one place to somewhere else. We don't care where, well, we care where it's going, but erosion is about the fact that it's going away from where it used to be. So I'm going to go back in the sun here, and think it on my lake. Now, every year, we have to put a little bit more sand down because the sand leaves and it doesn't grow legs and walk away. You can, I'm not sure if it looks totally, if this is the best way, but I don't want to get it too close to the water. There is an actual slope right here. It goes downhill, and that's because the water carried some of the sand from here out to there. That's erosion. So the sand was here, now it's not there, that's erosion. Deposition, the root word is deposit. Deposition is that the sand is now somewhere else. It was put somewhere else where it wasn't initially. So the water is extremely cold, or I would go in there. I went kayaking today. That was a bad idea. But there's a little bit of a ledge in the water. Again, this is probably not the ideal thing, but there's a little ledge in the water, and that's where there's more sand than there usually is. So the sand was deposited to that earlier part of the water, and probably even further out. There's more sand there because we all put more sand. We all have to put more sand on our beaches every year because the sand naturally erodes into the water. Now, you will see, and you'll see these different places, people have come up with structures and things to try to minimize erosion, because if you think about it, our houses are built on earth, and erosion is when sediment or earth goes away from where it was. So that can be a really bad thing if the earth that your house is on goes away. You might be hearing about in Lake Michigan, houses are literally falling into Lake Michigan because the earth has eroded so badly because of the high tides. So like my grandpa a bajillion years ago, not really, but it feels like it, he built this right here. This is called a retaining wall, and the purpose is to prevent erosion. So in particular, if the water were ever to come up, it would have a really hard time getting over that wall. And so this protects the land from being eroded away by the water. And we have the same thing down here. We have another one, it's a little bit, but this wooden board protects erosion maybe from the wind coming up or the water coming up and moving the earth that way. So that is erosion. When earth goes away from where it was, it's carried away by wind or water, snow, lava, not lava usually, but erosion is it's carried away by wind or precipitation of some kind, or maybe, I don't know, you can think about it. Deposition now is where it's set down somewhere where it wasn't before. And in order for either of those things to happen, we need weathering, because weathering makes it so that it's not one great big boulder that probably wouldn't move. It's little tiny pieces of boulder, smaller rocks. So all of these rocks that I have along my little garden path, sorry about my feet. All of these little rocks at one time were part of a big rock, and a weathering process eventually broke them down and softened them up. So we see round stones like Petoskey stones in Michigan. They're round and smooth because they've been weathered so much that all of the pieces that were sticking out are now gone. Okay, I'm going to pause and go inside so I can finish this. All right, we're back, and Graham got very nervous that I did not take him outside with me, so he might be jumping in and out. Okay, so I have 2 assignments for you this week. You guys did a phenomenal job last week, most of you. Really impressed. I'm really trying not to assign you very much compared to what the other teachers are doing, so between you and me. But I'm doing that because the things I give you take a lot more critical thinking than just giving you some things where you have to check yes or no or multiple choice. So first thing, there is a website I want you to look at and read. And hear me say this. I realize that you are thinking to yourself, do I really need to read it? And you're going to try to be lazy and skimp out of it. Do your brain a favor, do me a favor, and just read the doggone website, please. Then for today, the only other thing I want you to do is a quick check for understanding. It's 2 matching questions where you have to match vocabulary terms and definitions. But then there is a question that asks you to find an example of weathering, erosion, or deposition in real life. So go outside, look around. Look at pavement, look at areas where there are water. You can take your picture of it and submit that picture. You can use AutoDraw to give me, the gist of what was happening, and submit the AutoDraw in there. You can draw a picture, take a picture of it, old-fashioned way, submit it in there, however you want to do it. But I want to see that you went outside of your house, obviously following appropriate rules about where you should be and where you're allowed to be. But I promise that somewhere, even if you live in an apartment, even if you live with a bunch of other people, you go out on your pavement, you are going to find an example of one of those 3 things: weathering, erosion, or deposition. Or maybe you'll find multiple examples. So that's it for lesson 1. Lesson 2, there's not going to be another video for. Lesson 2 is a Google Slides assignment where you are going to write your own, you're going to do a weathering, erosion, and deposition slide. You're going to write your definitions, the things that cause it, and you're going to add a picture that shows, weathering, erosion, or deposition, like just a Google image search picture. And then there's 2 other pictures from national parks with specific questions I want you to consider. So I think it's 5 total slides that you have to do something with, and then there's a title slide. So it would be great if you could do just a little bit of research before you do that. Just, use Google. Google is your friend. Find out more about it so you can really rock that out. But the nice thing is there's no video that day, so that, these are supposed to be like 30-ish minute lessons. I wanted you to have all 30 to 45 minutes to work on that Google Slides presentation. All right. Thank you for bearing with me. I know that I say I miss you every time, and you might be getting tired of hearing me say it, but I just want to say one more time how much I miss you. See you later, guys.